Ms. Armstrong? Good evening. I'd like to call to order the September Board of Wow. I'm going to start that over. Call to order the September Elizabethton City Schools Board of Education meeting. Hope everyone's doing well and enjoying. It almost feels like fall. I'd like, if you would, if we'd please stand. Mr. Alexander is going to lead us in the pledge to the flag and a moment of silence.
As we pause for a moment of silence, I ask you to think about the family of Dr. Jessie Strickland, she's 5 back from the wall on this side here, and she passed last Saturday. Thank you. Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If Mr. Luther Lee Maxwell will come forward. Mr. Maxwell left school, Elizabethton High School, and went into the Marines prior to graduation and was wounded in Vietnam. And I am honored to be able to give the State Department diploma to Mr. Maxwell after all these years. He was certainly deserving at that time and is now, and we appreciate him and honor him with this diploma. I thank y'all for letting me out here. And the Marine Corps for backing me up. Thank y'all.
As Mr. Alexander's making his way back, I'd like to say hello to Councilman Tester. Happy to have you here. I'd like to also, I hope everyone was out Saturday for our Race for Wandale. Kelly, you and Cherie and Team Wandale put together one of the most organized races or anything I've ever been a part of. I was talking to Josh. I said it was one of those days that you remember why you live in Elizabethton. We had beautiful weather. There was tons of people. I can't think of a better morning that I've had, that I've got up that early, that I've had that little coffee, that I've had so much fun. So good job, and looking forward to doing that many more times. So I just wanted to mention that.
Miss Patty Simley had to be out of town, so we'll have to go another month for her. That we still have her plaque. It's gathering a little bit of rust, but anyway, we'll get her when we can.
I believe that Ms. Armstrong had requested that Mr. Weems be here to talk about some capital projects that he is, as it's worded, currently presently overseeing. So, Mr. Weems, if you don't mind.
If you would, give me some direction on the type of information that you'd like for me to talk about so I can get straight to the point.
Ms. Armstrong, you requested this, so I'll let you answer that.
I hope you can hear better than I can hear on this. I hear worse down here than I do up there.
Huh. Yeah, I'll just talk loud.
Yeah, I'm hoping to solve that this month. Yeah, any plans that you're working on? I haven't talked with anybody that can tell me, you know, what's going on. And you know better than maybe most of these do.
Well, the only capital project that I am working on currently are the athletic fields at T.A. Duggar. and that project is complete. The school system, as a separate part of that project, is building dugouts and the scores tower, but our project to construct the fields is complete. That's the only capital project that I currently have.
That's on the ball fields.
T.A. Dover.
Softball, baseball.
Yes.
Down that area. Okay. And then I noticed that you're working on some plans, and we're going to approve that, I believe, tonight for Elizabethton High School.
We've helped the school system with some general planning and conceptual work for a couple of projects, but at this point, I'll defer to staff to talk about those. You know as well as I do what those projects are. I could list the projects if you'd like, but details, they're conceptual at this point in time. Nothing's been approved. There's been no action taken other than to develop concepts.
Okay. So the band room, have you worked on anything for the band?
There's a conceptual drawing that shows a band room configuration and some remodeling of the auditorium space inside the high school. But as I said, they're all conceptual drawings. They're not funded projects. They're concepts.
Okay. I think that do you consider that renovation what they're doing in the band room, or?
No, ma'am. All that is paint up, fix up for the TSBA meeting on the 23rd. That has nothing to do with the actual building of a band room or the creation of classrooms in the band and choral area. So, no, ma'am. That's just so that we can bring the 125 members of the TSBA in there and have a meeting in there and the dinner in the cafeteria. That's all that is.
Okay. Now, choral room, will that be like it is right now with in the band room where they have to divide their?
No, ma'am. That's if and when this comes to fruition, that will be separate, and we're hopeful that that'll be part of what we call the choral and band room now, and that the band room would be entirely separate. But again, that's only on a rendering that Mr. Williams has been kind enough to put together for nothing for us, and that's where we are now. None of that's been determined to go forward, and doesn't have the funding for it at this point.
Well, I'm thrilled to death you're going to do a choral room. That's terrible the way they've had.
Yes, ma'am. You're absolutely right.
Awful. I noticed it was not listed on capital projects, and maybe this time it was listed. But
yes, ma'am, it was on phase 3, I think, of the original 5-year plan. You talking about the band room?
No, that's on phase 2. How about 3? Choral room on.
The band room, a new band room was listed on the phase 3. I'm pretty sure. Is that not right, Mr. Van Hus?
Okay, we're going to get to those, I hope, after.
Let me share the microphone, please.
Yes, I can't recall exactly on the 5-year plan. Yeah. On the 5-year plan, it may have listed the band room and conversion of the old band rooms to classrooms. For some reason, that's what I have in mind that was on there. And so part of that classroom conversion is the choral room that you're referring to. Was that your question? Does that answer your question?
Yes. Where it's going to be, and it wasn't listed on our 5-year plan for choral, and so that's what I wanted to know. Be sure you've got room for the choral group.
Absolutely, yes, ma'am. And as part of this initial conceptual phase that we've been in, Mr. Weems and I actually met with Mr. Elliott and Ms. Googe about 2 weeks ago to look at the conceptual drawings he has and get their opinions on some of those spaces. So we've already started a dialogue with them about the usable space there and what they would hope to see in that area. So,
well, could you kind of keep maybe the rest are not interested, but could you keep me updated on what's happening there?
I sure can. I think that if the board moves forward with the action we're asking for tonight, then you'll be getting more information than you probably ever want. So that's what we're hoping for.
We looked at that band room. Remember I found those notes with Mr. Weems and you, I think Ms. Baker and I, And we talked about those double doors
Mhm.
and the lighting.
Mhm.
Oh, it's terrible.
You know the lighting's been changed though.
I need to get down there and look at that. Okay. Oh, let's see. Yeah. Okay. Then room. Now, on T.A. Duggar, what's happening there with the science rooms?
Part of the design at T.A. Duggar was an 8-classroom addition, and part of those classrooms would be science rooms.
Is that it?
Is that all the classrooms would be?
No. Had you gone forward to look at any other options than what was on that other drawing?
No, ma'am.
But when you start the projects, will that be the first project?
T.A. Duggar? No, ma'am. It can't be. It can't be the first priority.
Why?
Because if you construct in the area that we're proposing, there's not enough egress to get out of the building. It's a fire code issue. So the stadium would have to be removed before you could actually build. You could build the space, you just couldn't occupy it. And I'm not sure that would be in our best interest to build an addition that we couldn't occupy.
Can I make a suggestion? Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to suggest, I really think that what you're wanting to do right now needs to happen in a capital project workshop, because we could be here for the rest of the evening talking about the specifics, and we're not at any point that we are ready to talk specifics. He has conceptual drawings. We just got the bond. We've not discussed anything yet. To me, I think that what we ought to do is have a workshop where we can sit down at a table together with all the interested parties, with Mr. Weems, and we start having a dialogue. Because right now we're just talking about what if, and we need, we could be here all day, so maybe we need to do that.
Yeah, I mentioned that, I think, 2 board meetings ago.
I begged for dates and nobody gives me one, but I'll set one this time, I promise.
No, I haven't had time either. Let me ask you on that. Let's do have a workshop. I'd like to see that T.A. Duggar. There's about 3 other places we can look for those 8 classrooms. Mm-hmm. So I'd kind of like to share that with you. These plans, the year 2000, the front of that building where the driveway goes around and out, which would make it so much nicer for traffic and for students. And so I'd like to talk about that.
We'll just plan on a workshop.
And look at those plans.
All right.
Here they are. And I won't open them unless anybody wants to look at them.
Well, let's save that for a project.
It makes the whole building look better.
Let's save that for a workshop.
Now, let's see. Richard, don't leave yet. Wait a minute. Okay. Okay, so we have, it'll be Elizabethton High School plans coming up.
Yes, ma'am. On the agenda. Is that what you're referring to? The agenda item, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. It's the Elizabethton High School campus. Yes, ma'am.
But we'll talk about that when we get to it, if you don't mind, because otherwise we're going to talk about it twice.
Okay. Can you come back and we do a walkthrough at some time, Mr. Williams? I haven't had a walkthrough in T.A. Duggar in a long time.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And they're just... you can bring your dogs.
Okay. You may regret that, but I'll be glad to do that.
But that would be a good thing, I think, if the board members would look at T.A. Duggar. Do you
Well, we did that back, January, February, when we did the tour of the schools?
Oh, yeah.
We were able to do that then.
Yeah.
Which was helpful.
Okay. Did you look at all the nooks and the crannies?
Well,
we can take another. I'll walk again.
Take another tour.
We'll walk again.
Good.
Okay. Yeah. So we're good to go.
And also, I'd kind of like for us to look at the elementary schools again. We'll walk all day. That'll be good for me.
Anything else?
Thank you for coming. You're very good. And I found this old drawing of the new Harold McCormick School. souvenir. It was drawn, I think, by Beeson. No. Godwin. Godwin? Godwin and Ross. Well, here it is, the old Harold McCormick School. Of course, it needs to be more rooms now. You may not want it. If you don't, I'll put it.
Copy. Thank you. I have a copy.
Yeah. Yes, for now. It's time on the agenda for citizens to speak in accordance with Board Policy 1.404. Anyone wishing to address the board, please come forward, state your name and address. Okay, seeing no one, it's time to approve the consent regular agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any changes or comments? I'd like to make one. Ms. Armstrong, if you don't mind, on item 10, which was the approval to review capital projects and place in prioritized order, can we pull that and have the capital project and talk about that at the project, at the workshop?
Prioritize.
Well, the whole thing to review and prioritize, and actually I would really like for us to not use that word. We've used word phases, we've used projects. Prioritize feels divisive. It feels like we're putting one project in front of the other, and so if we could just call them projects or something, or phases, but I don't think that we're in any place to do that tonight. A workshop would help us be able to do that. So if you don't mind, I'd like to pull 10 so we can have a capital project, because we don't know, they're conceptual drawings, we don't have any concrete numbers. You want to do the walkthrough with things. I think that would help us with the if we have the workshop to really sit down and look at things, and then we can talk about how we want to do things.
Ms. Moore, I think it may be nice if we could just briefly mention that, because we put it off the last time as well, but we don't have to spend a lot of time on it. But I think it would be good to just briefly discuss it, and that way going into the workshop, we know some of the things that we want to discuss at the workshop, and how maybe one or two of us feel about it.
Well, but the item reads to approval to review capital projects and place in prioritized order with cost. We don't have cost, and
I understand that, but we don't have to do the full thing. But I think it'd be good if we just briefly mentioned it. We don't have to stay on it a long time because we don't have the cost. But at least we have some ideas as to maybe what one or two of us are thinking about as far as arranging or looking at the cost and the order of it. So if you don't mind, let's leave it and just briefly discuss it. I really appreciate that.
If you want to vary from what you have on there, then when you get to that point, you're going to have to make the motion to revise that,
okay,
so that it's not stated the way that we have it presented.
Okay, that would be fine. We'll do that.
Then how do you want it revised?
Well, we're not at that point, she said, when we got to that.
No, I have to do it before we could
Oh,
approve
really?
the agenda.
Okay. I didn't think it was on.
It's item number 10 on the regular agenda.
Okay.
Is it staying on or coming on?
It's staying on, but we're going to revise how it's stated. We would like to briefly state and review our priorities of items, briefly.
If there's any way we can take, I've been talking with Mr. Elliott and different coaches and stuff, they really want that word prioritized out, because it feels like we're putting one thing in front of the other. And the bottom line is we all have projects that we like. What I think we ought to do is not rush. I mean, we've got to be moving forward, but, you know, I don't understand why we have to put things in order right now. We don't have costs. We don't have all the information. It's just kind of what project speaks closest to our hearts. It's not about our pet project. It's about what's best. And
well, this is why I'm saying we can briefly mention that we don't have the cost, but we can discuss what we would like to see done first, and the reason that we'd like to. So you're still not saying specifically exactly what it is or what we're going to do. We can do that in the workshop. But I think we should, and in doing so, we just say we'll briefly, very briefly discuss the items as far as what we're going to place in order.
So just discussion of capital projects plan.
discussion of capital.
There's no action.
No,
So it's just a discussion of capital projects plan.
thank you.
Is that okay?
That's fine, thank you.
Everybody's comfortable with the wording?
Yes,
May I suggest that we put a time limit on this, because obviously this could go for a very long time. So how about if you want to speak, we all speak one time, keep it minimum couple, 2 or 3 minutes, so that we're not here all evening. Is that okay with everybody?
that's fine.
You okay with that?
Yeah.
Are you okay with that?
Okay. Now, just tell me, are we pretty much staying with what was in the paper in city council?
We're not saying anything right now. All we're wanting to do is just get some information together. What was in the paper, they didn't talk to any of us. And they didn't talk to anybody at the school system. And there was a lot of inaccuracies that weren't quite right. Back in 2011, we set the projects. And when we had lunch with city council, they asked what was our priority. And I told them the priority were the 3 projects. They're the priority.
Well,
So.
but this is why I would like for it to stay on there. If we can go ahead and just, like I said, briefly discuss it, and then we can move on.
We'll keep it brief, if you don't mind.
That's fine.
Anything else? Anybody wants any changes or comments on the consent regular agenda? Everybody okay? Item on the floor is to approve consent regular agenda, changing the wording on item number 10, a discussion of capital project plan. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Mr. Alexander.
Now, to begin, prior to the personnel update, I'd like to say several things. There are good things going on in Elizabethton City Schools, and I think if you'll look down at the 20 by 30 of the exemplary employees in the exemplary system, and also we appreciate from City Council the proclamation, which is also on one of the easels over right there. And we're very pleased, and it seems that the employees had a good time too, and they will be receiving individually in their schools a dinner to celebrate that accomplishment. I will say also in front of board members there is a listing of test score comparison sheets, which I think that everyone, including the media, ought to see in reference to the first region ranking and where we are, and Elizabethton rankings within that first region. So I think that that's telling in itself. Also today, there was a consortium meeting of supervisors and others from systems in this area, and our supervisors made a presentation and answered questions that they had, and it was a very beneficial day for all, I believe. So with that in mind, our people are doing good things, and good things are happening in the classroom, and that's evidence of it. Now, also the new faculty pictures are up over here. I will remind, and I think Mrs. Brewer is going to do the same thing, there will be the TSBA meeting at Elizabethton High School, and there is, I have several sheets here indicating that you need to be there at 4:30, and board members, that is. And I think that we need to thank Elizabethton High School and staff there for putting up for that endeavor, but it also gave us an opportunity to do some things, as Ms. Armstrong said, in the band and choral room that need to be done over a long period of time. And won't be, once that renovation occurs, those things will just complement that. I would also like to say that I've been in this system almost 40 years, and I have never seen an event like the Race for One Tail. And when you have 1,200 to 1,400 people in one place, and there was never an ill or unkind word said that I saw. The weather was beautiful, as Mrs. Brewer says, and as the Cates family reunion says, a good time was had by all. And I've never seen anything like that here, and the feeling was tremendous. And we appreciate those people who made that happen. Also, I will say that there's a copy on the board member's desk of Dr. Dan Lawson's letter, which was signed initially by 64 superintendents, and I'm included in that. A copy for the governor asking that we have more communication with the superintendents as we move through the changes, which have been immense for evaluation, salaries, licensure, and possibly into special ed. And so we're really concerned at the pace It's not that changes are occurring, many of which are good. It's just that the pace at which this is hitting the people in the classroom is been dramatic. And we were asking that we get more input, and maybe we could slow this change process enough to give our people a chance to get a breath of air. But anyway, moving right along, again, good things are happening in our system. I'm sorry that you have to endure my reading this into the record, but these are the personnel changes. New hires, Regina Orr, Westside Lunchroom Monitor, effective 8/26. Angela Taylor, Hare McCormick Part-Time Assistant to the Teacher, effective 8/21. Carolyn Keys, Westside Part-Time Assistant to the Teacher, effective 8/21. Madison Kine, T.A. Duggar Part-Time Assistant to the Teacher, effective 8/26. Julie Profit, T.A. Duggar Part-Time Assistant to the Teacher, effective 8/26. Alicia Fisher, T.A. Duggar Part-Time Assistant to the Teacher, effective 8/20. Michael Wilson, that's not our AD there, folks. T.A. Duggar Part-Time Assistant to the Teacher, effective 8/20. Ashton Slagle, ESP Substitute Child Care Worker, effective 9/3. Sarah Blevins, ESP Child Care Worker, effective 9/3. Shelley Tribbett, EHS Cook, effective 9/3. Lois Edens, Hare McCormick Cook, effective 9/3. Angela Milhorn, Hare McCormick Lunchroom Monitor, effective 9/4. Lisa Carrier, ESP Child Care Worker and Bus Driver, effective 9/23. Now for resignations, Ricky Boffman, T.A. Duggar Assistant Girls Basketball Coach, effective 8/12. Luke Johnson, T.A. Duggar Assistant Girls Basketball Coach, effective 8/14. Penny Berry, Hare McCormick Part-Time Cook, effective 8/19. Chris Durr, Hare McCormick Lunchroom Monitor, effective 8/20. Johnny Burleson, EHS Assistant Baseball Coach, effective 8/2. Keisha Foley, ESP Child Care Worker, effective 8/23. Phyllis Small, Eastside Lunchroom Monitor, effective 8/29. Jeannie Roddy, EHS Part-Time Assistant to the Teacher, effective 8/30. Gordon Smith, T.A. Duggar Assistant Boys Basketball Coach, effective 9/10. Melissa Jones, Early Learning Center Part-Time Assistant to the Teacher, effective 9/20. Now for transfers, Madison Kine from Part-Time T.A. Duggar Assistant to the Teacher to EHS Part-Time Assistant to the Teacher, effective 9/3. Kevin Grindstaff from Regular System-Wide Bus Driver to Special Ed Bus Driver, effective 9/16. Kenneth Joyner from Part-Time System-Wide Bus Driver to Full-Time System-Wide Bus Driver, effective 9/16. And there are more. Leave of absence, Ileana Mankin, Hare McCormick Teacher Assistant from 8/7 to 8/23. Jimmy Eggers, EHS Cook, from 9/3 to 9/20. Substitute Teacher Michael Wagner, effective 8/16. Mariah Petrowski, effective 8/20. Lauren Taylor, effective 8/22. Samantha Price, effective 8/23. Johnny Grindstaff, effective 8/27. Christy Tyree, effective 9/20. Rachel Williams, effective 8/28. Mary Murdoch, effective 8/28. Samuel Blevins, effective 8/28. Annie Wallace, effective 8/28. Kelly Stanberry, effective 9/5. Not Edward G. Robinson, but Edward Robinson, effective 9/9. Sarah Stipe, effective 9/10. Patricia Ellis, effective 9/10. And we have a substitute cook of Ms. Sherry West, effective 9/6. Thank you.
I believe Other is next. And my community, I received several calls asking me to make a brief statement as to how much they appreciated Mrs. Strickland and to give our condolences to the family. And they mentioned one or two things. I told them I couldn't mention it all, but I would mention one or two things. The dinners that she had with them, how she approached them out in the street or walking across the street. And, of course, my father and her had a talk every day. She was always asking them what they needed or what they'd like to have as far as our school system and as far as this building. And she even invited speakers in. Of course, I wasn't here at that time, but she prepared a trip for them to take to visit minority colleges to inspire them to go on to college after high school graduation. So by all means, she will be missed by the community out here, and I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, go ahead. On this teacher licensure and the test that Governor Haslam has presented, the State Department of Education has, did you sign the petition?
I
don't
did.
know. I kept looking to see how you voted.
I've signed the petition, yes, ma'am.
So, well, that's a good thing. But you said it could be changed in the next few years?
Well, no, ma'am, the licensure, the State Board of Education voted to move forward with the licensure recommendation of the commissioner, but it's not effective, I think, until 2015. And so there was, I think, some of the pushback from the local areas had created some question in the State Board's mind, and so they delayed the implementation to 2015. So we're hopeful that they'll slow down a little bit on that, because all these changes have been very, as I indicated, very traumatic for our teachers, and they don't need any more pressure than they already have. I think they're doing all they can do and more.
Do you think it'll change then in 2014,
Ma'am, I think there were 64 superintendents at that meeting who signed that out of 136 immediately that day. Now, as to what that number is now, either reduced or grown, the commissioner came back and made the statement, the governor came back and said that he was very disappointed that superintendents would stand together in a situation like that and oppose what the commissioner, who's had 2 years of teaching experience himself and is not a public educator, what he would suggest. And Mrs. Armstrong, to be honest, as a long-time teacher yourself, as Mr. Armstrong is, I think that public educators are somewhat offended that they're being directed by individuals, many of whom don't have very much classroom experience. I think you have to have classroom experience to tell people what they ought to be doing in that location. But that's my opinion. That's maybe a little bit too much information. But
I just couldn't believe they would even think to base that on one testing day.
Well, ma'am, there's no test in reference to licensure. Licensure is they're changing the expectations for licensure. And what I'm saying there is, ma'am, the people who are grandfathered in on tenure cannot be taken off of tenure, but they can lose their license. And if they lose their license, tenure won't do them any good. So it may be a roundabout way of removing people without their losing tenure, or they're having to deal with tenure. Mm-hmm. So, ma'am, I don't know what their guidelines are, but it's sure causing a lot of frustration and harm to our teachers in the classroom, and we don't need that.
Oh, no. Mercy, no. I was going through some old things, cleaning out, and I have found more things. In 1985, I found that newsletter where Elizabethton ranked higher than Kingsport on testing. Mm-hmm. They didn't have the TCAPs, but they had the standard tests that we use in science and reading and math. And Elizabethton ranked above Kingsport, and I thought, they've always been good. Mm-hmm. And when, the letter did you receive the letter from Miss Owen? Well, she didn't give any credit to the teachers, so I wrote her a letter back and told her the teachers and the students are the ones that make those scores, not the administrators. However, they play I hate to admit that they play
Armstrong, you're right. The teachers and the students deserve that, but I think our principals and certainly our interventionists and coaches have done a tremendous job, too, dealing with race to the top and things of this nature, and handling all those decrees that have come down from Nashville that have made everyone's job more difficult and have taken the focus off the child in the classroom, which is what I thought we were supposed to be doing.
Well, I just asked her to put credit where credit was due, and it was a very nice letter. I have a copy if you all want any of them.
I think everybody probably got one. It was very nice of them to do that. All right, we ready to move on to the regular agenda? Item on the floor is to approve, we're on the number 9. First item is to approve a local Tri-Cities attorney to present Elizabethton School Board. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Need a second.
If we don't have a second, we are not moving on.
Did she hear you?
I don't know.
Ms. Armstrong, we needed a second for item about the local attorney.
Huh?
Okay.
Yeah. Did you
We have a motion.
I made the motion.
She made a motion. I'm waiting for a second.
to have the workshop?
No, we're on the attorney. We're on the first item of the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to make the second? Otherwise, the motion's going to die. Do you want to make the second on the motion? You don't.
I can.
Well, if you don't, it's not. We're going to move on. So,
Okay, I will.
okay. Well, is there any discussion? I think we talked about it a lot last month, so
The discussion on the local attorney,
it's to approve a local Tri-Cities attorney to present Elizabethton City School Board.
I'm going to have to come up there in your faces. I can't hear what you say. I
No,
can
I
hear
think
you,
you
but
could.
it doesn't make any words.
okay.
We're on item number 9. We're on number 9, about the attorney.
Oh, yes. Are you ready for me?
I am.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I promise I'll get that taken care of. At the last board meeting, we tabled that, right?
Well, yes, so we're
Yes,
talking about it
okay.
now.
And I focused on if they could be present or not present at a meeting. And I shouldn't have focused on that one thing, because I really had a problem with somebody outside of this Tri-City area that you could not communicate with. And I think I talked about that a little bit. And then when I looked at the contract we have with the Memphis attorneys, they would not allow us to talk directly with them. It had to come through the superintendent or the chair. Now, if I'm going to pay somebody for services, I expect to receive those services. And every month, as you well know, when we vote for or against the budget, we are voting for their money, their fund, as well. And it makes me upset that I have to vote to pay them when I haven't received any services. I don't ever get an opportunity to talk to them because it's there. I can't do it. And then I spend the money for that. But I wonder if that's really quite legal to do it that way, because it's the taxpayers' money. It actually is not mine. Now, East Tennessee people like familiarity, and we do too. And I think that helps when you have an attorney in your town or in a nearby town. We have great attorneys here. I don't have to go into detail on that one because great educational background. And then I got to thinking, do you never use TSBA attorneys? Because that's what I use, and Ms. Brewer said that's what she used. But do the supervisors or superintendent, you may use the Tennessee School Board's attorney, and there's no charge to that. I had not read that contract well, and I should have. There's a copy, and I put it in there for you. I also put the duties of the school board, and one, of course, is to appoint an attorney, and that is a board attorney. Now, in his contract that he's written, it has grown since that first year that he was with it. Or I keep saying he, but it really isn't just singular. There are several attorneys in that firm. If on page 2.5 in his contract, it reads, all legal services must be coordinated under the direction of the chair of the board and the director of schools. So that kind of puts the other people in the background there. And if you hire another attorney, then in the contract it said they should be supervised by the firm. This is really a very tight contract. On page 3 of 5, licensure and training. The firm is and at all times shall remain solely responsible for all training, licensure, continuing education, or other requirements set by any applicable governmental agency, as well as all costs, fees of such training, education, and licensure. Sure. Termination is at the bottom of the page. The district may terminate the services of the firm at any time for any reason, in which case the district will be billed only for the services rendered. I think I did mark one or two other things, but in looking at that contract, I thought this is a very controlling contract for a school system. I feel like it grew from a simple one, and it outgrew that, especially education. I think it was very appropriate. Through this, the attorney really has control. He has a lot of control of the school system. And, of course, we give him that power.
I don't understand. How do you mean they have control over our school system? I don't understand. How do they have control over our school system?
Because we ask them, for instance, when we talked about Mr. Mitchell or we talked about Mr. Davis, we go through them when we have the power to do everything we want to do with that. It's in the Tennessee state law.
I remember when we were talking about Mr. Davis, we wanted to somebody actually suggested we set aside Tennessee Code Annotated which said that you have to complete 3 years. Mr. Davis hadn't, and someone actually suggested that we set aside Tennessee Code Annotated and go ahead and proceed. So that's why we use them, because they're experts in the law. I'm not. I can set up a campus visit. Dr. May can deliver babies. We all do different things. I am not a school law specialist, and they've helped us get through those difficult situations very well. Was everybody happy? Probably not, but we followed the law, and they kept us from making a mistake. And, you know, they've given us great advice on both of those times.
Well, we can follow the law,
but we all interpret it maybe a little differently. I'm not comfortable interpreting the law. You are comfortable with it. I'm not.
Yeah. You would get that way.
Not going near it.
Okay. And the last thing is kind of a puzzle, and I'm going to check into it a little bit more, is having the same attorney for the board and the administration a conflict of interest. I remembered that was debated in a nearby school system not long ago, and I thought, well, I'm going to check into that because that was brought to my attention.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd like to make a few comments. I've really kind of struggled with this issue a little bit, simply for the fact that I actually see value in both of these, having someone locally and having someone away from here. Simply being that, a local attorney can come and be present on our meetings, which I think that would be helpful from time to time. But also you got your folks in Memphis. I know it seems a long ways away, but, with electronics and stuff, but, they are neutral. They're not involved in a lot of the local political issues that go on in our community. And also look at the expense of it. Their rate's $195 an hour. A local attorney who represents the county school board, his rate is $200 an hour. So as far as expense goes, I think it's very comparable. I don't see a whole lot of difference there. I think these folks are on an as-needed basis. The attorney for the county school board is on an as-needed basis, so I think their arrangement is very similar to what someone locally would be. But I guess the thing that I struggle with a little bit is we do have a contract with these folks. There is an easy out for either side as far as the termination of it, but these folks do what we ask them to do on an as-needed basis, and I see no fault in these folks, so it makes it kind of hard for me to terminate a contract with a group of individuals, even though they are a distance from here, for a group of people that do what we ask them to do, and apparently they do it very well. And then in talking with, the administration, your legal counsel has to work well with, the administration and things of that nature. And apparently, the central office, the folks here, the ones that I've asked, are pleased with what the services and stuff that they get from the folks down there. So it makes it kind of hard for me to sit here and terminate a contract that we still have 2 years on when those folks have done nothing wrong. They do what we ask them to do. So therefore, like I say, I see value on both sides, and I've struggled with this issue somewhat. And I agree with you, I can't agree with you more. They're very capable attorneys here in the Tri-Cities area, and I'm sure could step up and do the services we need and be in touch with TSBA and things of that nature and represent us well. But it's kind of hard to terminate an agreement when there's no real cause or no real justification or means other than, we would all feel a little more comfortable at times with someone sitting down here at the table with us if we had an issue. And, that one does concern me a little bit, but, we always seem to kind of get through those issues and come out okay. So, like I say, I've gave a little thought to this, and like I say, I've struggled with it a little bit. And I talked a little bit, about keeping those folks, because we do have a contractual agreement with them and having a co-counsel. I don't see co-counsel working very well. And what few attorneys I've talked to around town, you want a counsel, legal counsel to represent us. So having a co-counsel, somebody there and somebody here to step in, I just don't see that scenario working out very well. I thought that might be a possibility to have someone here and them there, and I just don't see that working out for us. So, like I say, I've given quite a bit of thought to this, and like I say, with an existing agreement in place, maybe when that agreement expires and we look at it a little differently, then we may go in that direction. And we may still do that, but I'm just telling you what my thoughts are.
All right. Previously, our board has had 2 attorneys at different times. And personally, I would like to have someone locally as well. But if we could possibly have a local person.
When did we have? When did we have 2 attorneys?
We had Mr. Booth, did we not? And
no, he just
Mr.
represented the insurance company.
Oh,
he was not our attorney.
Oh, excuse me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I know they were working together, and they were always there.
He was representing the insurance, and Charlton DeVault was representing us.
All right. But
You're talking about Mr. Booz, not Booth. Earl Booz.
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we're speaking of the same person.
Yes, we are. That's the only one I know. Thank you. And I don't know about the previous boards before us, or except in that situation, which I was here. But other than that, I don't know if they've had 2 or maybe 2 work together before, but I'm not sure because I didn't investigate that far back to see if there was anyone further back than that. But I know they worked very well together, even though he may have been insurance.
He was.
We still consulted with the both of them and worked with them. And like I say, I wouldn't mind having a local person. And again, Ms. Armstrong brought out administration and board. I think I don't know if there is another school system that shares attorneys. I know there's some systems that have an attorney for the administration. Then there's the board has a separate attorney, but they do not share the same attorney.
Maybe Mr. or whoever drew up the contract would be willing to change that one issue of communication. I don't know. I don't plan to use them no matter what, but they might would change that.
I don't think we should change the communication particularly. That's probably the one thing that under any agreement, whether they be local or a attorney outside of this region, what you said about the taxpayers' money is exactly why it needs to go through a central point of contact. There are 5 of us that could ask 5 different versions of one question and cost $195 each to get the answer, because they'll charge an incremental fee for every time they do a communication. The last thing we need is a blank check, because when I walk away from, when the gavel falls and I leave here, I'm just a parent and a constituent and a citizen. But when I sit here, it is only there that collectively we have the power to order or spend public funds. And so having access to an attorney individually is inappropriate, I think, and a poor use of public funds. Going through the chair or superintendent allows the board to get representation through the chair, who is representative of the body as a whole, but only when the body as a whole expends the money. And the superintendent is a special circumstance because he or she must have access to an attorney in order to administrate the school in accordance with all laws of the state of Tennessee. It's under his purview, and he can't be expected to know those and know that he's handling a situation in accordance with the law, or she, whoever is sitting in that role, will need access. So the contracts are written that way, and I had a little issue with it when we talked last time about having 2 attorneys, because you have 2 physicians, they disagree, who's going to take charge of that surgery if they're operating on somebody? There has to be some clear chain of command. And when it comes to professionals of that nature, I think it's important that that person not have to know who's in charge. Now let's suppose we're doing that surgery and an injury occurs and there's 2 surgeons. Somebody's going to ask for who's in charge, and somebody's got to figure out whose fault it was. And that's kind of what happens when a law firm gives us advice. As a professional, they're liable for their advice, just like a surgeon is for his or her actions to a patient. And there's a chain of accountability. When 2 attorneys get involved, here's what happens. They point fingers. You know, it's their fault. They told you that. They told you this. And so I'm a little concerned about having 2 separate attorneys unless the issue is very clear as to why. The one exception would be if there was an antagonistic relationship between the board and the superintendent. And the board was trying to, just like the superintendent needs to understand sometimes how to deal with an employee that they supervise. I only have 1 employee, and I have none, but the collective 5 of us have 1. And if we had an issue that we needed to seek out legal counsel and there was conflict of interest, I think we would then be required to retain a firm only for that one instance. But for the direction of the school, we should be on the same team. And so anything that the superintendent needs to ask, or the chair needs to ask on the behalf of all 5 of us, should be shared with us, where, you know, when it has to do with the board, that should be shared with all of us, you know, and no one has individual access, but rather collective. If you had a question and you wanted to route it through, they may already have the answer. Or it may be that there's 4 versions of one question. So that's, no matter who it is, that's something I think we really need to make sure that the route that you do. The second thing you said was familiarity. East Tennessee people like familiarity. And I agree, and I think we have some very talented attorneys, but in my research I don't see any who specialize in education law. And I know that the ones that we have that as a specialty. I feel a lot more comfortable in the familiarity of the attorney with the field of practice. Again, you know, when I operate, I'm a gynecologist, so I operate on the female reproductive tract. But please don't come in if you're a male and need surgery and it's something that I haven't seen in a long time. On the inside, they're different. So, you know, I'm just saying, you know, if I'm an attorney who handles all comers, I probably have a good familiarity and an ability to interpret the law. But the nuances that we're going to need them for aren't the things that we can easily read and understand. So that's why I like this particular firm, is because of their track record that's proven with education law. And it's that familiarity that I particularly like. The TSBA attorneys, you mentioned that, you know, we can use them for no charge. They don't represent anyone, and they say that in their disclaimer that they are there for as advisory for the TSBA. But that's actually where you can go as an individual, school board member. TSBA is our organization. It's our professional organization that helps us to know how to be a better a better board member. They're representing all boards across the state of Tennessee. So if you have a question that you want to pose, that's no charge because it's part of our dues to get an answer. But as individual advice, we would need to go, if it's an individual issue, to our own attorney and pay the bill ourselves. If it's a board issue, the board can pay that. We can vote to expend the funds, but again, we have to do it corporately, not individually. Other than that, we should go through TSBA to know how we should best handle things, and much like Mr. Alexander would go through, the attorneys to know how to best handle issues within the school system. So I think the contract is written pretty well to make that happen. The other thing is licensure and training. You said that actually, I think in that contract line on page 3 of 5 is referring to the attorney's licensure and training. It's not telling us that they will be responsible for dictating how we educate our teachers, but rather how they have to maintain professional certification. And that's, I believe, what that means in that contract. So obviously, I'm not really in favor of having a separate attorney. I'm very comfortable with using electronic media. In my office, we use Skype a lot. When someone's not there and can't be there, they will Skype in. And before we said that this firm who's represented us well needs to be changed out with local just to be local, I think we ought to explore the possibility, if we want them at our board meeting, I know that was important to Phil, to try and see how a digital version of having them in attendance. I know they're agreed to do that, and we could actually test that and see if it would be functional. But I know for me, we have, in my office, we have it set up where you can Skype into a business meeting, and we frequently have 2 or 3 people Skyped in at once. And because our lives are kind of all over, that allows everybody participation. But if it comes to a point where we are regularly needing an attorney to be present, then we need to explore the cost of bringing them here or of obtaining a local attorney. But for the very purpose of access individually, I think that's the absolute wrong thing for us to do, is have individual access. It allows for misconduct on our own parts if we're going individually and running up bills with an attorney firm. That's my opinion. So.
Do that, or do you know, I actually wrote them an email, but I never heard from them. Do they represent any other school districts in the state of Tennessee?
I would imagine so.
Absolutely, exactly. Those, the names of which we don't know, but I know that the TSBA uses Mr. Shields and Mrs. Owen as presenters, and Mr. Shields is more of a contract man, and Mrs. Owen is more of the educational wing of that. But they use them to present to, not just to board members, but to superintendents throughout the state.
As well as other school attorneys, they do training
for attorneys
as well.
Absolutely.
Ms. Armstrong knows that because she's been at the summer law conference and knows that when they have been there and been on the program, that Mr. Shields' firm has done training for other board attorneys.
They were there this summer as well. All right, let's go ahead and vote on this. Item on the floor is to approve a local Tri-Cities attorney to represent Elizabethton School Board. Mrs. Perkins, would you call the roll?
Give me the motion again, please. I wasn't listening.
To approve a local Tri-Cities attorney. We're going to vote on that. So she's going to call the roll.
Mrs. Armstrong?
Yes.
Ms. Baker?
Yes.
Ms. Boer?
No.
Dr. May?
No.
Mr. Isaacs?
No.
All right, moving on. Next one is a discussion of capital project plan. Okay. And again, please, we've been here an hour. Everybody's worked hard all day. These folks are exhausted. this could take forever, so let's limit this quickly, please.
All right.
Okay, on the 5-year capital plan, which we're going to work on, I understand, at a workshop, right?
Not the, we're going to look at the project, yes.
Right, the projects under the capital plan. I assume that we're going to, but you say we're not going to take those in order as listed. They're just in their category, like for the year 2012, 2013.
You're talking about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. I noticed the band room, and I wrote down 1 or 2 things that you need to keep in mind is that once this money is spent, there is no more. And that was one of the first things brought out to me by one of our people in higher offices. So if you spend all that money, then you've got to resort to your own budget. Now I'm talking about the money from the sales, which we haven't gotten, but it's coming from the sales tax. So you want to be careful how you spend that, because if you spend it all on a athletic complex, then you don't have any for band room.
Well, I guarantee you everybody's well aware of how much money. We saw that dwindle as we were going along. We're all,
Okay.
We've driven poor Mr. Tester and the other council members crazy over that.
Did you get my little?
I saw it in the paper.
Good.
Yes, ma'am.
Good. Okay. But we have to be aware of that
Yes.
we don't all put all our money in that one thing. Then, we don't have, like, on here, and I can put that on at the workshop, the classrooms for an elementary school.
Well, right now, we have to remember, as April 2011, this board, the majority of the board voted the 3 projects being the athletic complex, which Mr. Elliott said we should call the Athletic and Performing Arts Complex. We voted for that. We voted for the 8-room addition at T.A. Duggar, and we voted for the band room. That is currently the 3 projects. When we met with City Council, you were in the hospital, Ms. Baker was out of town. They really wanted to know if Mr. Isaacs and Dr. May supported the 3 projects, and we let them know that we did. So as of right now, and has been for almost 3 years, those are the projects. And I don't believe we muddy the water. I don't believe we look at anything else. Like you said, we've got X amount of money. It's not enough to pay for everything. So we don't need to be adding in anything else to make this more complicated. So for now, those 3 projects.
Okay. Now, as I said, I read what City Council said. They're a very wise council. They really are, and they're very giving. And so I thought, well, from what they say, that sounds like they're interested in the classrooms, and I am too. And that's why I'm concerned about those science rooms at T.A. Duggar, or whatever goes into all of those rooms. I do want to talk about that, but I'll save it for a workshop on the elementary. When I looked at the plans, drawn skeletal plans, floor plan, and then the number of students that are going to be going through those elementary schools, going to have more classrooms.
Well, that's going to be for another day.
Put them someplace else.
That's going to have to be for another day.
All right. I just have very few comments. When we have our workshop, I'm hoping that will be one of the first things on our list, because our elementary schools have grown, and there is a tremendous need for the classrooms, as you said. So during our workshop, I hope that we will evaluate all of that very carefully. And of course, on our school district planning, the very first thing on the list is identifying and analyzing the major factors that affect what and how students learn. And of course, that will have a big effect as far as the spacing in the room. And hopefully maybe we can discuss a date before we leave tonight for the workshop. Thank you.
There's another question I wanted to ask you on. I want us to kind of put out of mind that we have to tear down a stadium to build a classroom. And we don't. We do not have to do that.
Well, let's talk about that in the meeting, because that's another one of those things that can...
I know, we will. That stadium is as well loved almost as a covered bridge, I have found out in town. So I don't think we need to fool with that right now. But I want us to be sure that we go the right direction. I'll bring all that out on money.
Anybody else? All right, moving on. Next item is to approve Tom Weems, architect, to develop specification for proposed capital projects at the Elizabethton High School campus. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to open this discussion up a little bit. We talk about Mr. Weems quite a bit, and I think we're at a point in these projects that we need to formally get Mr. Weems involved. He has very generous, gave his time to give us a lot of conceptual, a lot of things we can or can't do, and speculating on some things and things of that nature. So I think we need to formally get Mr. Weems on board and let him start speccing some of these projects out so that we can start getting a feel for what the actual cost would be. And I would like to propose that Mr. Weems be the project capital manager for all these projects that we're doing, because he's an expert in the field of these type projects, and he's somebody that I think as a group we need to lean on him pretty heavy to guide us through these projects and how we need to go about trying to get these projects done. We don't have, like we said earlier, we've watched the amount of money that we were hoping to get dwindle down to a point whereas we know we can't get all these projects done now, but we can in the near future get all these projects done if we put them together correctly. But first thing we got to do is get some numbers, good solid numbers out there so that we can make some good sound decisions. And I think Mr. Weems is already involved enough that he can hit the ground running and start putting some of these specs together and some of these numbers together for us so that we can make some tough decisions. But I also think, in talking with Mr. Weems and Mr. Van Huss, the possibility of forming a committee with Mr. Weems as the project manager, some board members off this board, some council members and some staff members, and maybe a member or two from the community at large to get together around these projects and try to bring it back to this board and make some recommendations how this board should move forward with these projects. Would Mr. Weems or Mr. Vine, Mr. Weems, we've had you up here several times, but this is a point where, Mr. Van Huss may want to join you also, but I know you're familiar with what we're talking about, and so I guess we're at the point now where we need to really start getting serious and bringing somebody on board to actually bring some of this together where it makes sense for us so that we can, move forward with these projects.
I appreciate your comments. The only comment I would make first off is that I should not be the manager of the capital part of the project. I should be a consultant to the board who's ultimately in charge of the capital. I shouldn't be doing both. I have a responsibility to help you spend the money wisely, but the control of the money does not rest with me. That rests with the board.
So you'd be more project manager.
I would be the project architect. Project consultant.
Okay.
I could be the project manager, but remove the word capital.
Gotcha.
Okay, project manager. Okay. However you see fit. But
I just want to make sure everybody understands I do not control the money.
Okay. Well, we understand that, but we need someone that is an expert in this field that can direct us how's the best way for us to spend this money.
We need to know.
Us meaning the board.
What we need to know, excuse me, I'm sorry, but what we need to know is cost. We need to know, I know you don't want to be in charge of capital, but we need to know what an addition would cost or not cost and what taking something out or adding something would cost. We need some help to make the capital decisions. But I agree, all five of us, once again, same thing. When we expend taxpayer money, we've got to do it as a group of five.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and I think that the step that Mr. Isaac's suggestion is a wise one. I think that maybe as a modification to that step, instead of retaining me to design a project that's not yet scoped, that we don't really know exactly what we're going to do, that you retain me to help you scope that, so that not only you look at just one project, but you look at 2 or 3 in a chain to see what you can do with the money that's available. And that's probably a 30 to 45-day process, because there's more people involved in that process than me. For example, if you look at a stadium, I'll have a sports person who does turf and track and that kind of stuff, help give us realistic budgets. If it's classroom, it'd be another person to probably help with that process too. So that way, at the end of this workshop process or committee process, you would have projects laid out with realistic budgets and scope so that you could make an intelligent decision on what it is you want to do and how you want to do it.
We appreciate the work that you do, but I believe also we're supposed to have 3 bids for any of our
We're not bidding yet.
No, I know that. But I'm saying, even though he's given his opinion, just as our mayor brought in the person that discussed the stadium, we're still required to have those bids. But I do appreciate, especially that work you did for Harold McCormick. You gave us maybe 4 or 5 different views of it with the specs. And I do appreciate that. But I believe, according to the state, we still are supposed to have at least three bids. And of course, we choose the best, whether it's the highest or the lowest. We choose the best one.
Well, that's a board issue. That's not an issue
goes.
for me to comment on.
Yeah.
That's a board issue.
So I do appreciate what you do.
Thank you.
Item on the floor, approve Tom Weems, architect, to develop specification for proposed capital projects at the Elizabethton High School campus. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next item is approved a revised agreement between the Elizabethton City School System and the Elizabethton Police Department for the School Resource Office Program. This agreement will be reviewed annually and will begin on the date on which approval is obtained from the Elizabethton City Police Department / Elizabethton City Council. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander?
The only change on this is to add the chief police wanted the attorney for the city to actually sign off on this, and so in order to do this, we have to I have to ask you to have this agreement supersede the one you signed before, and that's the only thing. Otherwise, semantically, the difference between the selection of commander and supervisor was the only change in words. So, under the circumstances, I ask that you reconsider and vote for this one, so I can take it back to the city to be taken to the city council.
Any questions or comments? Okay. Item on the floor is to approve revised agreement between the Elizabethton City School System and the Elizabethton Police Department for the School Resource Office Program. This agreement will be reviewed annually and will begin on the date on which approval is obtained from Elizabethton City Police Department / Elizabethton City Council. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Next item is to approve agreement between Northeast State Community College and Elizabethton City Schools from August 19, 2013 through May 31, 2014. Can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander?
Our work with Northeast State has been of great benefit to us, as all those at the high school will tell you. And working with Dr. Gilliam has been a pleasant experience as well. And we all believe that higher education is post-high school education, and higher education is the route we want to send the majority of our kids. So in those circumstances, Northeast State has been a strong community friend of ours, and we want to honor this, and I ask you to vote for this, because it's been nothing but good, our relationship with Northeast State. And it's going to get better, I think.
Any questions or comments? Okay. Item on the floor is to approve agreement between Northeast State Community College and Elizabethton City Schools from August 19, 2013 through May 31, 2014. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. Next item, approve the contract between Elizabethton Board of Education and Blackburn Childress and Stegall to audit accounts of Elizabethton Board of Education and to audit accounts of Elizabethton City Schools activity funds for the period beginning July 1, 2013 and ending June 30, 2014. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. Can I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Alexander?
What can I say, Ms. Wilson? They have been excellent. Mr. Peters, especially, and his group of individuals are precise, thorough, and nice, and excellent to work with. So, now those circumstances, their information is accurate, and they don't care to tell you if there's something that they think should be listed as a finding. But they've been wonderful to work with, and some of the people who work in that firm are graduates of our school too.
How long will we use this firm, Ms. Wilson? I noticed there's two separate contracts, and I guess one is the general purpose fund, federal projects, and nutrition. I mean, the other one's the activity. And the numbers they throw out not to exceed 18,000, and I forget the other one's around 13. Is that pretty much in line? I mean, is that pretty much the numbers that we fall in? It doesn't really. Hopefully, it runs a little under that, or somewhere around that, or.
Those amounts are what they will charge for the normal audit. Should something happen or some type of fraud situation, something like that, that they have extra duties and extra work is required, then we may be charged extra. But that is what they will charge for auditing of those funds.
Is this required on an annual basis by the state law, or is this just how often we do it? Or
it's an annual requirement. June 30th of every year, you have to have the audit on each school's activity funds, the general purpose food service, and federal projects fund. And that has to be approved and listed with the state by September 30th.
Okay.
Anybody else? Item on the floor is to approve the contract between Elizabethton Board of Education and Blackburn Childress and Stegall to audit accounts of Elizabethton Board of Education and to audit accounts of Elizabethton City Schools activity funds for the period beginning July 1, 2013, ending June 30, 2014. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you. Next item and final item is approved resolution regarding changes to educator licensing policies. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Thank you. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Alexander.
The reason I was asleep at the switch in that last one was because I was looking at this licensing situation, and the biggest problem here, what we're talking about is renewal of licenses, and that was done on a 10-year basis prior to this, and this is a major change, and there are problems. That's why the Board of Education delayed it for a year. But I think Ms. Armstrong mentioned the reference to this being tied, the renewal being tied to growth scores and things of this nature. We as educators many times don't have a lot of control, and classroom teachers don't either, on what occurs in the home and things of this nature. And if the students do poorly, what we're talking about here is taking away someone's livelihood. So this is pretty serious. So I personally don't think that this will hold because of the pressures from the localities. But I ask that as you read this resolution, it asks that there be some reconsideration by the Board of Education. Once again, the majority of the Board of Education of this state are not educators, they're lay people. And as Dr. May pointed out, gynecologists are not college professors, and things of this nature. So, not that they're not bright, but anyway, I'm just saying, folks, we need to have more public educators' input in what's going on.
Any questions or comments? Okay. Item on the floor is approved resolution regarding changes to educator licensing policies. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you. The next regularly scheduled board meeting will be held Thursday, October 17, 2013, 6:30 in the Mac Pierce Boardroom. Please remember, Monday night, be at the high school at 4:30. I will be sending out an email with workshop dates. Please let us know any dates that are good for you. And remember to look at the support services section in our policy workshop so that if there's anything that we need to look at in that section, we can talk about it in the next board meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Have a good evening.